Hi friends, welcome to the English version of explanation of unit number 2 of BFM. The topic is LRS, liberalized remittance scheme and other remittance scheme. So friends, we have started this particular English session, English explanation session, in which all the units are being covered in English language, and especially for those who can't understand Hindi and who have difficulty in understanding Hindi, I am trying to explain all the concept in the layman term in English term. So I have already covered unit number 1. If you haven't watched the video, do check the description section of this particular video for explanation of unit 1 video. Now let's continue our discussion on unit 2. So the unit 2, these are the topic we are going to study. Let me just take a glimpse of the topic. The first thing we will see this: what is LRS, what is liberalized remittance scheme and other remittance facility for resident. The second thing we will see capital account and current account transaction. The third point is what are the key sections under FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act, vis-a-vis liberalized remittance scheme. The fourth point we will see permissible and non-permissible remittance under LRS, and the fifth point is operational guidelines. Sixth point is remittance under LRS for current account transaction. Seventh point is tax collection at source. This is called TCS. You know, TCS means tax collection at source. And the next is LRS vis-a-vis capital account transaction, and the seventh is reporting requirement under LRS. So we will cover all this topic one by one. I will take 2 to 3 videos to cover all this topic. So let's begin with the first topic that we have. It is regarding the liberalized remittance scheme and other remittance facility for resident. Let's begin. See, let's try to understand this particular topic in detail. So today we are going to break down a really important financial topic in a way that is super easy to understand. We are talking about liberalized remittance scheme or LRS for resident individual in India. Sound fancy, right? But don't worry, I have got you covered. So what is LRS all about? Well, the liberalized remittance scheme was introduced by the Indian government on 4th February 2004. Basically, this scheme allows people living in India to send money abroad for certain region. So if you want to send money abroad, for any region, this scheme allows you to do that. Now, this could be for something like paying for your education, investing in property, or even gifting money to someone overseas, right? So it can be in any form. Now the question is, who can use LRS, right? Who can use LRS? So I have given you the idea what is LRS. Who can use this LRS? Okay, not everyone can use this scheme. It's only available to the resident individual. You can see this word written, resident individual, which means people who live in India permanently. When I say resident individual, I mean to say people who live in India permanently. And yes, even minors can also use it. So minors can also use it, right? Minors can use this liberalized remittance scheme, but they will need a guardian to do it for them, right? Minors can also use it, but they will need a guardian, right? Now, who can't use LRS? That's the key point. Who I have told you who can use LRS. Resident individual can use it. Minor can also use it. Okay, but who can't use it? Who can't use? That's the point. See, corporate, partnership firm, HUF, trust, NRI. What is NRI? You know, non-resident Indians. These are not eligible. So if you fall into any of this category, LRS is not for you. If you fall in category of corporate, partnership firm, HUF, trust, NRI, so LRS is not applicable for you. So have you understood what is LRS? Who can use LRS? Who can't use LRS? This is a basic thing which you have covered in this particular slide. Now let's move to the next slide. Okay, so you might be wondering, what can you use actually LRS for? Right, you might be wondering, what can you use LRS for? So the scheme let you send money abroad for a few different things. This could be either a current account transaction like paying for your child education or medical treatment, or capital account transaction like buying property or investing in foreign stock. In short, the liberalized remittance scheme is a handy way for residents of India to send money abroad, but there are rules about who can use it and what it can be used for. Understanding these basics can help you make informed decision when it comes to managing your money internationally, right? So let's talk about this capital account transaction first. So friends, if you really think that this content is really helpful to you, please hit the like button. And if you want to get such type of lecture for all the subjects, we have already started the English version. You can enroll in our course. For more detail, you can WhatsApp me on the number shown on the screen. We have also started the mock test program for upcoming JSC IB examination. You can take help of the mock test program to build up your concept. Now let's dive into something that might sound a bit technical, but don't worry, I will explain in a way that is super easy to grasp. We are talking about capital account and real current account transaction. Ready? Let's get started. First of all, let's talk about capital account transaction. Now, what does that mean? Simply put, a capital account transaction is something that changes the asset and liability. You see this word, this is very important word, that changes the asset and liability. That changes the asset and liability of a person living in India when it comes to anything outside of India. Okay, or it could be about asset or liability in India for someone who live outside India. Let me again rephrase the term. What I am saying, a capital account transaction is something that changes the asset or liability of a person living in India. So suppose a person is living in India. So it is something which is changing the asset or liability of this particular person when it comes to anything outside of India. Or it could be about asset and liability in India for someone who live outside of India. Let me give you an example to make this concept more clear. Imagine you are living in India and you decide to invest in a company that is based overseas. Okay, so you have made a decision that you will invest in a company which is overseas. Sorry friends. So you buy some share and now you own a part of that particular company. So what you do, you buy some share and now you own a part of that particular company. That investment means you have created an asset outside of India. Right? What does that investment means? That investment simply means that you have created an asset outside of India. That is called capital account transaction. Right? So now let's move on to the current account transaction. These are basically any transaction that are not capital account transaction, which is you can see other than the capital account transaction. So what does it mean? So this could be anything from making payment for trade, paying interest on loan, or earning income from investment. For example, let's say you have a son or a daughter studying abroad. If you send money to help pay for their tuition, rent, or living expense, that's current account transaction. You are not creating any new asset or liability with this money, but you are supporting your child education and daily needs. That is what the difference. To sum it up, let's sum it up. Sorry friends. To sum it up, capital account transaction involves creating or changing asset and liability, like investing in foreign company, while current account transactions are more about everyday payment, like sending money to support family abroad. So understanding this particular difference between these two can help you manage your finance better, especially when you are dealing with money across border. So if this breakdown helps clear thing up, makes you to hit the like button. Okay, now let's come to the next slide. Now let's discuss some of the key sections. So there are some important rules under the Foreign Exchange Management Act that relates to the liberalized remittance scheme. Don't worry if it sounds a bit complicated. I will break it down for you in simple terms. First thing first, under FEMA, if you are living in India, there are some rules about owning or dealing with foreign exchange, foreign security or property outside India. Basically, you can't just go out and buy property or foreign currency abroad unless you acquired it when you were living outside India, a non-resident. Makes sense, right? Let me again explain that you can't just go out and buy property or foreign exchange abroad unless you acquired it when you were living outside India as a non-resident. So suppose you were living outside India as non-resident and you have some acquired some property, right? But if you haven't done that, if you have not lived in the foreign country, and if you want to buy property there, you can't just go and buy property. That's the point, right? You can see it written: no person resident in India shall acquire, hold on foreign property, any foreign currency or any property unless it is acquired while being resident. That is the point. Right? Suppose what I am telling you is, suppose you have not lived outside India, so you can't acquire the property, foreign security, foreign exchange outside India. That's the point. But here is the good news: if you are resident of India, FEMA does allow you to invest in property or buy equity, like share in a company outside of India. Right? This is a good news, right? Of course, you have to follow the guidelines that are in place. This is what liberalized remittance scheme or LRS comes in handy, because it provides a framework for making this kind of investment, right? Now let's talk about how you can use foreign exchange. Under FEMA, any person in India can buy or sell foreign exchange to or from an authorized dealer like a bank. Any person in India, you can see this written, any person in India can buy or sell foreign exchange to or from an authorized dealer like a bank for something called a capital account transaction. This could be for things like investing in property or stock abroad. But again, there are limits on how much you can send or receive, and these limits are set by the regulations under the act. Right? So under FEMA, any person in India can buy or sell foreign exchange to or from an authorized dealer like a bank for something called a capital account transaction. We have already discussed it. So to sum it up, FEMA has rules in place to manage how residents of India can deal with foreign exchange and investment abroad. The liberalized remittance scheme make it possible for you to invest in property or share overseas, but you have to stick to the guidelines and limit that the FEMA has set. Now let's come to the next slide. Next slide is talking about some more important rules under the FEMA that you need to know, especially if you are dealing with the foreign exchange through LRS. So let's start with the section 10 subsection 6. So imagine if you have gone through the process of getting foreign exchange, maybe from a bank or another authorized dealer. Now this section is all about making sure you use that foreign exchange for exactly the purpose you got it for. If you don't, or if you don't return it within the specified time, it is considered a violation of the law. Right? Have you understood? Any person who has acquired or purchased foreign exchange does not use it for such purpose, not just render it within a specific period, committed crime. That is what it has been saying. It is simply saying that suppose you have gone through the process of getting the foreign exchange. Now this section is all about making sure you use that foreign exchange for exactly the purpose you got it for. Let me give you an example to make it more clear. Let's say you got some foreign currency to pay for your child tuition abroad. You got some foreign currency to pay for child tuition abroad, right? But if you end up using that money for something else, or if you don't use it and don't return it, then you could be in trouble. So it's really important to use foreign exchange exactly as intended. That's the point. It is about section 10 subsection 6. Now move on to the section number 11. This section gives the RBI, that is the Reserve Bank of India, the power to direct authorized dealer like banks on how they should handle payment related to the foreign exchange. So what does this section do? This section gives the power to the Reserve Bank of India to direct authorized dealers like bank on how they should handle payment related to the foreign exchange. The RBI can also step in if someone is not providing the required information or is not filling necessary return. And here is where it gets serious. If someone fails to follow this rule, the RBI can impose a penalty. You can see the amount of penalty. So RBI is directing the authorized person or dealer with regard to the making payment or desist from doing such act. So the penalty can be as high as rupees 10,000, and if the issue continues, then there could be a further consequences. So if someone fails to follow the rules set up by the RBI, RBI can impose a penalty, and the penalty can go as high as rupees 10,000, and if the issue continues, this could be further consequences. So when you deal with foreign exchange under FEMA, it is super important to stick to the rule, use the foreign exchange for the purpose you got it, and make sure to follow all the guidelines laid out by the RBI. This will help you avoid any penalty and keep your transaction is smooth and hassle free. Now let's come to the next slide. So in this case we are talking about something really important. What happened? So here it is section number 13. Okay, and one thing I want to tell you, that further contravention, in case of continuing contravention, additional penalty which may extend to rupees 2,000 for every day. Right, so this was about section number 11. Now section 13, let's see the section 13. So if you break what happened if you break the rule under the Foreign Exchange Management Act? So this is covered under section number 13, and it's all about penalty. Let's make it easy to understand. All right, so what does the section 13 says? Simply put, if you break any of the rule, regulation or notification under the FEMA, you could face some serious penalty. Let me explain how this works. If the rule you broke involved a specific amount of money, if the rule you broke it involve a specific amount of money, you might have to pay a penalty that is up to the 3 times the amount. So suppose the amount is 10,000, okay, and if you broke the rule you have to pay 30,000. So if the amount is suppose 1 lakh, the penalty can goes up to rupees 3 lakh. That's the point. But what if the amount involved is not clear or is not easy to calculate? Two things can happen. Either the amount is clear, right? You can see it written penalty to thrice the amount, okay, and when the amount is non quantifiable, when the contravention is non quantifiable, that means the amount involved is not clear or it is not easy to calculate. In that case the penalty can be up to rupees 2 lakh. In that case penalty can be up to rupees 2 lakh. And if you continue to break the rule, there is more, an additional penalty. Let's move to the next slide. It is written there, additional penalty of rupees 5,000 if you continue to break the rule. That there is a more, an additional penalty of rupees 5,000 could be charged for every single day that the violation continue after the first day, right? So to sum it up, section 13 of the FEMA is all about making sure people follow the rules. If someone does not follow the rule, they could face hefty fine that can really add up, especially if the violation continue over the time. So it's always better to stay on the right side of the law and make sure you are complying with FEMA regulation. Now let's see some permissible and non-permissible remittance under LRS. So if you are thinking about sending money abroad or using the LRS scheme, there are something you are allowed to send money for and something you are definitely not allowed for. Let's break it down. So all right, let's start with the what you can't send money. Let's start with what you can't send money for under LRS. Okay, so which for remittance are not permitted we are talking about. So this is really important because if you try to send money for any of these reasons, it won't be allowed. Here is a quick list of what is not permitted. So first of all, you can't send money for margin or margin call to overseas exchange or counterparty. You can see you can't send money for margin or margin call to overseas exchange or overseas counterparty. Okay, this is something that typically comes up in trading or investing, and it is not allowed under LRS. So this is a remittance of margin or margin call to overseas exchange comes under trading or investing, and it is not allowed under LRS. Next, if you are involved in export, you can't send money as commission on the export that are made for equity investment in joint venture or wholly owned subsidiary abroad. So if you are investing in a company overseas, you can't use export commission for that purpose. That's the point. If you are investing in company overseas, joint venture, wholly owned subsidiary, in this thing if you are investing, and whatever export commissioning you are getting, you can't use export commission for that purpose, right? Now the next thing is callback service. You can see written callback service. Another thing you can't do is send money for something called callback service. This refers to certain type of international phone service that are prohibited, right? So in this case also remittance cannot be done. Let's see the next point. Okay, furthermore, you also can't send money to buy banned or proscribed magazine. Some magazine is banned or proscribed, you cannot send money to buy that. And you are not allowed to purchase foreign currency convertible bond issued by Indian company abroad. Okay, so you're not allowed to purchase by using LRS FCCB issued by Indian company abroad. The next thing is, if you are a company that has to balance dividend, you can't send those dividend abroad, right? Also you can't, so this is about company, right? So if you are a company and that has to balance dividend, you have to balance dividend, so you can't send those dividend abroad. Also you can't remit interest income from fund held in non-resident special rupee account. Let's try to understand. So some fund is held in non-resident special rupee account, and the interest income on that particular fund, you can't remit that. Okay, so here is a big one. You can't send money out of India for lottery winning or even to buy lottery ticket abroad. So for lottery winning you can't do, lottery ticket purchase you can't do. The same goes for sending money related to the gambling, racing or any other hobby. Now the next is export commission, right? Export commission and credit route. Let's talk about this. So you are not allowed to send money as commission on export under what is called rupee state credit route. You see there written rupee state credit route. Right, So you are not allowed to send money as commission on an export under rupee state credit route. This is a specific financial arrangement that has its own set of rule. So let's summarize. While the LRS allow you to send money abroad for many reasons, there are strict rule about what you can't do, whether it is investing, gambling, or certain type of phone services. It is important to know what are not allowed so you don't run into any issues. Now let's talk about the schedule number 2. So we have talked about what you can and can't do with LRS, but did you know that some remittances are allowed? Sorry friends. Did you know that some remittances are allowed only if you get approval from a specific government department or ministries, right? So let's break it down. Let's see which ministry approval is required in which case. So under the schedule 2 of the LRS, there are certain remittances that you can make, but only if you get green light from the right government department or ministry. Let's go over few examples to make this clear. First up, if you are planning to send money abroad for a cultural tool, you can see, if you are planning to send money for a cultural tool like an education exchange or a cultural performance, you will need approval from the Department of Education and Culture, which is a part of the MHRD, Ministry of Human Resource Development, right? Okay. The second is, if a state government or a public sector undertaking PSU want to place an advertisement in the foreign print media. So suppose if a state government or a PSU, if PSU is there or a state government is there and they want to place an advertisement in the foreign print media, they have to get approval from the Ministry of Finance. This is to ensure that these advertisements are aligned with the national interest. The third thing is, in the case of PSUs that need to send money abroad for freight charges of vessel they have chartered. For this they will need approval from the Ministry of Surface Transport. So the case of PSU that need to send money abroad for freight charges of vessel they have chartered, they need to approval from the Ministry of Surface Transport. Similarly, if a government department or PSU is paying for import that are being transported by ocean or CIF, so if the government department or PSU is paying for import that are being transported by ocean or CIF, you know what is CIF? CIF is cost insurance freight. So they also need to get approval from the Ministry of Surface Transport. Now let's talk about something more tech related. If TV channel or internet service provider need to send money abroad to pay for hiring transponder, they need to get approval from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, right? So Ministry of Information Broadcasting or Ministry of Information Technology. This ensures that the use of transponder aligning with the national policy on broadcasting and internet service. Lastly, if someone other than international, national or state level sport body wants to send money abroad for prize money or to sponsor a sport activity, the amount is more than 1 lakh USD, they need to get approval too. See, try to understand. So if someone other than international, national or state level sport body want to send money abroad to prize money or to sponsor a sport activity and the said amount is more than 1 lakh USD, they will need to get approval too. This is to keep a big sport related transaction in check and ensure that they are done for the right reason. So see, we have talked about what ministry approval is required in which particular case. So let's wind up this particular session right now here. The English, but this was just a sample video for those aspirants who are looking for English explanation. You can join our course of BFM, in which each and every point is cleared in similar fashion, taking example, making you understand in the lucid manner. And if for more detail, you can WhatsApp in this particular number. Thank you.